Hey, welcome to Capturing Christianity. My name is Cameron Bertuzzi, and today in this live stream, we're just taking your questions on anything related to apologetics. It's going to be a super chill live stream. If you have any question related to apologetics, we'll try to get to it. If you want to send it in as a super chat, that's a way to help the ministry and make sure to get it will make sure that your question gets answered today in the live stream today. Don't know exactly how long I'll be around, but I want to hang out as long as I can. So let's get to one of the first questions that was sent in by, going back up in the live chat, from Harry Stark on Graham Opie. There's like 1,000 comments from people saying that it was muted. Well, we're here. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull up one of these. Actually, we did just get a super chat sent in from Maverick Christian, so let me get to that one first. Maverick Christian says, in your opinion, what are the best and worst protheme arguments you've heard? Best and worst. All right, so good question. And I really hate doing Q&As, honestly, even though I'm like in the middle of doing one and I just started and I was the one who wanted to do this. Because when I get questions, I have to think up on the spot, and I'm just not very good at that. So it's difficult to think of like the best and the worst. The best is actually easier because there's one argument that if you follow my work at all, you know that this is like my favorite argument for the existence of God, and that is the argument from contingency. I defended recently an argument called the Kalam cosmological argument, a debate that I did with Stephen Woodford over rationality rules. And that argument I think is also very good. But my favorite argument for God is the argument from contingency. The worst? What is the worst? See, that one's a whole lot more difficult because I'm not super familiar with the worst arguments for the existence of God. I mean, you'd probably find those on TikTok, probably. There was actually a video that I watched from Stephen Woodford recently where he was reviewing some Muslim apologists, and I don't remember the exact argument that they gave, but I remember agreeing with pretty much everything that Stephen said in his video. So that could be considered one of the worst. And this is pro-theism, so it's not pro-Christianity. So maybe go check out that video. It's a good plug for Stephen. Go check out his work. Okay, let me go ahead and pop back up here and pull up the question that we got initially from Harry Stark. Okay, he sent in a bunch of questions. Active today. And this was the first one he sent in. Question: from your perspective, what are the major flaws of Opie's metaphysics? This one is a difficult question because although I'm familiar with Opie and he's been on the channel and I've had him debate different people, I'm not like the expert on his views. I do know that he's got a view of modality that is really important for the way that he responds to certain theistic arguments, and that is basically the view that there's a kind of like a beginning point where all possible worlds go back to like a single point, and that is the necessary part of reality. And what he argues, it's a kind of like branching view of metaphysics. So you've got this single starting point where all possible worlds, they come back to the single point, whether it's a beginning of the universe or if it's an infinitely old universe, they still all come back to like a single point. There's some sort of single origin. And everything sort of branches off. The possible worlds branch off from this initial necessary thing. And what he argues, from what I understand, is that this necessary thing, there's not much reason to think that has any kind of divine properties. And that's where I would disagree as a theist. And what you might be interested in watching is the debate that I hosted. It was a while ago now. It wasn't much of a debate. It was more of a dialogue between Josh Rasmussen and Graham Opie. And they basically disagreed at this point as well. So Josh argues that the necessary part of reality is God. It's got these certain divine properties. And that's basically what I would argue with Opie as well, is that it's good that he and theists in the tradition of philosophy of religion, the contemporary theists who are like arguing these days, there's a lot in common between Graham and these theists. They both agree that there is some necessary part of reality. At least I don't know how firm Graham is on that, but I know that he like has publicly said that that's the view he sort of leans toward. So that's where they agree, and then the place where they disagree is whether or not this thing has those divine properties. I would also say, though, that one other area of disagreement, and this is not necessarily in metaphysics, it's more in epistemology, is that his arguments, and this is one of the ways that he gets around a lot of these arguments, especially like the argument from fine-tuning. So he just says that these features of the universe are necessary because he's got this branching view of modality. And so like the cosmological constant, the strength of gravity, all of these different features of the universe that a lot of Christians, a lot of theists, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, if you're a theist and you believe that these are good arguments, they appeal to these features of the universe, like the ones I just mentioned, and say that those features are best explained by theism. Okay? And then Graham has this view, this branching modality view. He's like, no, these features are necessary. And that still leaves open in my mind. So maybe you can't run, if his theory of modality is correct, you can't run like a metaphysical argument for that conclusion for theism, but you could nevertheless run a sort of epistemological argument for theism, where, and this is an analogy that I got from, I think it was Maverick Christian who brought this up. He sent it to me in a message or something. I can't remember exactly how I got my hands on this analogy, but suppose that you were to find, like on the backside of the moon, we were to find this message written out by like asteroids. Asteroids had hit the back of the moon. We hadn't seen it until we like sent a satellite around to the back of it. And it spells out a message. Say that the message like spells out the entire book of John in like perfect Greek, something like that. Okay. And at that point, like Graham's response might be, oh, well, this isn't necessarily evidence for Christianity or theism because the laws are metaphysically necessary. Okay, so this was bound to happen no matter what, right? That's one way that you could respond to that. But nevertheless, there still seems to be, like, that's wrong, right? We want to still infer design based on this message that we found on the backside of the moon. So maybe what you could do at that point is say, okay, even if the laws are metaphysically necessary and this message was bound to show up regardless, there is nevertheless a sort of epistemological argument that you could run that for all we know, it's possible that this message wasn't there, but it is there. And so there's a different way that you could just run the argument. I won't go into any more details there, but those are probably two areas where I would disagree with Graham. Okay, how are we doing on time? 10 minutes in. That was a 10-minute answer. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of questions in. That's another thing that kind of stinks about this format is that I've got to go through and read the questions and then put them up on the screen and then answer them. And I've got to do that while I'm talking. It's difficult. Okay. This one just random. I'm just going to pick this one. All right. Theophilus Sogoromoro. Is that right? M-O? Question. Hey, Cameron, I'm agnostic. I've sincerely heard apologetics arguments as objective as I can, yet I don't find them convincing. What biases might I have that's preventing me from believing? That's, Theophilus, that's a difficult question. I try not to speculate about like the psychological motivations that are keeping people back for like these different biases. I don't really know you. We all deal with bias, so I'm sure that there are biases somewhere. I have bias. It doesn't matter who you look at. Any kind of like champion of reason that you think is like the guy that has all of the answers, that guy has bias too. Doesn't matter who it is. They've all got bias. But in this circumstance, I don't really know you. I don't know your background. I don't know some of the things that led you to become agnostic. I'm sure that there's some baggage that could be unpacked, but I'm also not, I try not to speculate about psychology. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I try to stay away from that, even though it's sort of inevitable. When you're in this space, it's difficult not to try to psychoanalyze people. But when I'm asked to do it, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to do it. There's probably some biases there. Maybe what you need to do is just some of your own introspection and try to identify some possible places. Like, I mean, here's just one test that you could do is like, how much really good pro philosophy have you read on the side that you disagree with? That's probably one area that you could look in terms of bias. And that would just be confirmation bias. So you're only looking at stuff that confirms what you already believe. So that may be one area, but I don't know you, so I can't really speak beyond that. Okay, here's this question. I'm just going to start picking random questions from the live chat. How about that? This might be the easiest way to go. Birchwood, in your opinion, what is the most sound argument for the supernatural? First of all, I don't like the term supernatural. I've gone on record as saying I don't like the term because I don't know what it means. And it might seem like I'm kind of being pedantic, but honestly, like, I don't know what kind of category you're trying to pick out when you say that there's this supernatural being. You could try to put it in other terms that, like it's an immaterial thing. It's a non-physical thing, but those terms have the same kind of problems as well. Like, what category we're trying to delineate here? I just don't like the term. I think it's unhelpful. I prefer to talk in terms of just objects, God or not God. Those are the categories that I like, that make more sense to me, because this word has almost turned into like a rhetorical kind of thing. So it's like people are using this term to pick out things that we no longer believe as like, a rational culture anymore. We no longer believe in fairies. We no longer believe in demons. We no longer believe in angels. Those are all things that are supernatural. We don't believe in those supernatural things anymore. So give me some evidence for something that's good. It's like it can be used as sort of a weapon. This term alone can be used as a sort of weapon, even though there's not really a good definition to it. And if you ask anyone, everybody that you ask is going to give you a different definition. But that's not the only problem, that there's different definitions. The problem is that when you actually look at those definitions, they've all got problems themselves. And I know that there's other terms in philosophy that, there can be bickering back and forth on like what's the best definition of some term, like the term knowledge. But nevertheless, I still think it's sort of an unhelpful term to use. So I spent a lot of time on that. So we can just put it in terms of like, what is the most sound argument for the existence of God would be a much better way to phrase this question in my view. And I've already answered that. It's the argument from contingency. That's in my opinion, that's the best argument for the existence of God. I won't talk anymore about the supernatural natural distinction for now. Oops. Someone just sent in a super chat, and the live chat's going like crazy, so I'm trying to get to. I clicked on the wrong comment, but I'll answer it anyways. What are your thoughts on limited atonement? I don't know. I don't have any thoughts on it. All right, super chat from NG Rosser. It seems as if people don't believe on the basis of apologetics. They believe first and then use apologetics to bolster. Do you see this as a problem? So again, this is on the psychological side of things. It's like you're trying to explain why people believe what they believe psychologically, as opposed to just looking at the arguments and seeing if they're good or bad arguments. That's what I try to focus on. I want to focus on whether or not the arguments are good or unsound or bad arguments. That's what I care about. I don't care about whether or not someone believes on the basis of confirmation bias. While that might be interesting for that's just a difference between me and someone who is someone who just likes to psychoanalyze everyone. I don't care. I'm less interested. I'll put it that way. I'm less interested in a person's psychology as I am interested in the arguments that they have in support of their beliefs and whether or not I have good arguments in support of my beliefs. So this one says, it seems as if people don't believe on the basis of apologetics. They believe first and then use apologetics to bolster. That might be true. It has nothing to do with the arguments though. It's a completely separate question. If they use apologetics to bolster what they already believe, has nothing to do with whether or not these arguments are sound or unsound. That's what I care about. I care about the arguments. That's what I want to know. I want to know if these are good arguments. Are these good? Is this a good reason to believe that God exists? Is it a bad reason to believe, or is it not a sufficient reason to believe that God exists? Are there problems with it? That's what I care most about. So I'm not going to speculate on whether or not people do that. I'm sure that people do. People do it on both sides. It's not, again, this is something that kind of frustrates me online, is that there's this sort of presumption that it's only theists that have bias that they have to deal with. But it's literally everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Everybody has biases that can prevent them from either obtaining the truth or having justified beliefs. Everybody deals with bias. And so like it's very unhelpful to look at one side, be like, let's look at atheists. Let's see what's sort of preventing them from accepting theism, from accepting Christianity. Oh, well, here's an obvious thing, sin. Okay, that's what some Christians do. Sin is holding this person back. They just want to have whatever kind of sex they want. Okay, I've even interviewed a guy who said that's what's holding people back from accepting Christianity. And I'm like, everybody deals with bias. Like, it doesn't matter who you are on what side of the spectrum. Like, you can speculate on what it is that's holding someone back, but it's just uninteresting to me. Everybody deals with bias. Okay, I'll get off my my soapbox. Oh, we've got a bunch of super chats that were sent in. Thank you guys. Okay, this one is from Edwin6146. Hey Cameron, what are your thoughts on the absence of knowledge on the complex information needed to build the first living cell? Yeah, Edwin. So I'm not the guy that I can't even say. I'm trying to be too funny with the accent. Intelligent design. I am not the intelligent design guy. I've looked into some of the videos, like I've seen some of Stephen Meyer's work, and he's actually my favorite intelligent design theorist. I think that his work is actually pretty decent, pretty good. But personally, I'm not like the guy to ask on information needed to build the first living cell and DNA and stuff. I'm not the guy. So unfortunately, Edwin, thanks for sending in your super chat, but that's all I can give you. I don't have any thoughts on the intelligent design movement. I'm not a proponent of intelligent design, although I am very open to arguments that are recently being made by Seth Hart, Dr. Rope, I can't remember his first name, and Dr. Zachary Arden, who are arguing that evolution itself, like the theory of evolution, and this is not an argument from intelligent design, it's that evolution itself is evidence for design. It's evidence for theism. A good analogy for that is like if you were to come across a car factory, okay, some like the machines that are building cars, like you would nevertheless, even though like those cars were built by machines, you would nevertheless infer design because the way that it builds the machines, I suppose, and the end product tip you off to like, this is, built by somebody. Someone designed this process. Anyways, that's what I'm open to, but I'm not really into the literature on intelligent design. So sorry about that, Edwin. All right, another super chat from Tom A. Thank you guys for sending these in. What happens after the body dies? Do us believers see Jesus, or do we wait in the graves until the resurrection? Curious about this topic. Yeah, I don't know. I have no clue what happens. I'm open to the view. I'm open to soul sleep. I'm open to dualism. I'm open to being like, to be absent from the body is present with the Lord. The interpretation that says that you're like not immaterial or non-physically, again, these terms that I don't like, but in some sense you're with Christ. I'm open to that, but I'm also open to soul sleep, the idea that after you die, you have no conscious experiences until the resurrection at the end of time. I'm open to like, I don't know. This is actually one thing that I haven't put too much study into it, but it's one of the questions that I've got myself. Is like, what happens? Because there's these near-death experiences that my friend Braxton Hunter just did a talk on this at his church, and I'm just like, I have no clue. I don't know what happens. I'm open to a lot of answers to this. So Tom A, there you go. I'm curious about the topic too. All right, Anglican aesthetics. Have you ever considered Anglicanism? Considered in one small sense, yes, I have considered it as like a possibility, but I don't know if you can be an Anglican and deny the real presence view of the Eucharist, because right now is where I sit theologically, I'm not a real presence advocate. So I don't think that Jesus's body is really there in the Eucharist. Jesus' blood is really there. I don't think that that's the correct view. And that's based on biblical reasons. I don't think that the best interpretation of John 6 is a sort of literal reading there. And there's a lot more that could be said on that. If you're interested, go check out the interview that I did with Dr. Stephen Nemish. Stephen Nemish. I interviewed him on the Eucharist, and he's got a what is it called? Memorialism. Memorialism is his view. So I'm open to Anglicanism, sort of. But if that's like a necessity for becoming Anglican, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. So that's my answer to that. Computational theist. Good question. When will you have Dr. Graham Opie on for another interview? Also, when will you interview Dr. Eugen Nagasawa? So Eugen was actually supposed to be on the show in August or something. Like, I think it was August. He was supposed to be on the show, but we had to push it back. I forget exactly what it was that caused us to push it back initially. And then we had to push it back again. And he was like, you know what? Why don't we just wait to do this? Because I was going to interview him on his argument, The Problem of Evil for Atheists. I was going to interview him on that topic. But he was like, you know what? We've had to push this back because he's working on a book on this argument. So he's like, wait until the book comes out and then we'll do an interview. So that's what I'm planning to do with him. I just don't know when that's going to happen. So that's Eugen. Graham Opie, I'd love to have him back on. Something I've been throwing around is the idea of having him with Richard Swinburne talk about something. The issue is that I've already reached out to Richard about this and he turned it down. But this was about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been a little while. And I've also seen him online do interviews with other people. So maybe he'd be open to it now. I don't know, but that's something that I'd like to reach out and follow up on. Oh, right. We had a super chat sent in. Scroll down to pull it up. Natalie Lutska. Do you think Jesus' message of the kingdom of God has been overlooked by Christianity focused too much on redemption, even though that is important? So, Natalie, I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Keep in mind that I am not like the Bible answer guy. I'm more on the philosophy, the apologetic side of things. Apologetics is still, biblical apologetics is definitely a thing, but I'm not like the Bible guy. I'm more on the philosophy side of things. That's what really interests me. Now I've done work on like the resurrection, and I've got a talk that I give on the evidence for the resurrection. It's pulling on like the latest data and stuff, which is really cool. But it's stuff like this. Theologically, it's sort of hit or miss. Sometimes I've done some of my own work on it. Other times I'm just going to have to do what I'm doing now and just be like, I don't really know. And sorry, because I know you sent this in as a super chat. Natalie, if you have another question that you'd like to ask, feel free to leave it in the live chat, and I'll try to keep my eye on the live chat, and I can just pull it up. Do you think that Jesus' message of the kingdom of God has been overlooked by Christianity focusing too much on redemption? Yeah, and that's also like a sociological question too, and I'm not really qualified to speak on that either. I don't know what Christians have been focusing on too much or too little. I haven't done the sociological research in order to know that kind of question. Okay, this looks at like an interesting question from Epic Wade. Recently left the faith, and after going back to church for a day, I realized how homophobic my old church. Why not ask you people what your views are on the LGBTQ community? Why not ask your people? Is it? I'm not sure what the question is here. There's no question mark. Let me just read it again. Left the faith, and after going back, I realized how homophobic my old church was. Why not ask your people what your views are on the LGBTQ community? So I know that there's a lot of variety in the Christian church right now. And a lot of like conservative Christians will say that the progressive side of things, which is very open and embracing of the LGBTQ plus community, they'll want to say that they aren't really Christians. They're not they may just put it in the terms of like, they're not historic. They don't embrace historic Christianity. And so there's a sort of plethora of views here. And I don't want to say that those aren't Christians, but I don't necessarily agree with them. Personally, I'm undecided on the whole thing. I don't really know what to think about it. And that's, again, a factor of I just haven't done my own personal research, because I know that there are good Christian philosophers on both sides of this, good Christian theologians as well. So I just haven't done my own research on it to really have a firm opinion on this. Although I know it's like a hot button topic. A lot of people want to know like what Christians have to say about this. I'm just not the one to give any kind of answer on that. So sorry about that. And I know that might seem a little bit like I'm trying to avoid the question, and maybe I am. All right, Zhang Shi. I think that's the way to say this. Dr. Yang said the other day that the New Testament authors didn't write with a Nicene Trinitarianism in their mind. If true, then how can one appeal to the Bible for Trinitarianism? That's a good question. I'd have to think about that. He said the other day that the New Testament authors didn't write with a Nicene Trinitarianism in their mind. If true. So even if they didn't have that in their mind, I think that you could still piece together different portions of Scripture in order to build a case for Trinitarianism. That's like my initial thought, is that you don't necessarily have to have the authors have this view in mind in order to build a sort of cumulative case from different portions of Scripture for Trinitarianism. That's sort of the way that I would respond to it. So you could look at, like, the New Testament authors might not have this view in mind, but it nevertheless might be entailed by some of the things that they're arguing, or the things that they say, the things that they recorded from what Jesus said. There's different ways that you could, I think, build a case for Trinitarianism based on the data that's in there nevertheless. That's my initial thought on this. Okay, this guy, interesting comment. It's not a question. Edison Ambrister, if you're not a Bible guy, then you need to change the name of your channel. I don't necessarily see why that would be the case. There's a lot of different, so within the realm of apologetics, and that's, I suppose, primarily what I'm concerned with on my channel is apologetics. My main focus is on defending the existence of God. That's what I'm most interested in. I'm interested in the arguments for theism and the arguments against theism. So I've done a lot of work on the problem of evil, for example. I've done a lot of work on the arguments for the existence of God. I'm pretty familiar with the argument from fine-tuning, argument from contingency. The moral arguments I'm not super into. I'm more into the arguments for moral knowledge. And I am interested in the argument for the resurrection, for the truth of Christianity. But there's different areas. So some people are more interested in defending, a sort of inerrant view of the Bible. Some apologists are really interested in that. And there's certain motivations that are behind the scenes going on that motivate them to be interested in that, as opposed to the arguments for the existence of God. So in essence, I could say someone who isn't interested in the philosophy of religion and the arguments for and against God's existence, someone who doesn't put a whole lot of work into those arguments, maybe we should say that they shouldn't name their channel Capturing Christianity or something related to Christianity. But I don't think that we'd want to say that. So I suppose what I want to say is that people focus on different things. They have different motivations that motivate them to focus on those different things. In my case, my motivation is that my brother became an atheist about 10 years ago, and that is what sent me on my journey initially into apologetics. And I still have a love and care and appreciation for my brother. He's still an atheist, and I would love to see him come back to the faith. That's the thing that I've been focusing most of my time and effort on, is the arguments for and against theism, for and against Christianity. What are those? Trying to do that. And so, like, arguments on the Bible, apologetics of, like, how could God command these things in the Old Testament? Those are arguments, in my view, that has to do more with, like, biblical inerrancy, just biblical apologetics, which isn't necessarily required in order to have the belief that theism is true, or that Christianity is true or false. And so that's the kind of stuff that I focus my time and effort on. I just wanted to address that. I saw it pop up in the live chat, but all right, let's see if any more have come in. Thoughts on the Reformed view of the Eucharist from Anglican aesthetics. I don't have much knowledge of the Reformed view of the Eucharist. I don't know exactly what that is. So you'd have to inform me on that, Anglican. Sorry about that. Hi, Cameron. Do you know why William Lane Craig does not respond to Raphael Lataster's book, The Case Against Theism? I don't know. I'm not William Lane Craig myself. I have no idea why he hasn't responded to it, other than he may not even be aware that it exists. That may be a reason. He may not think that it's good enough to warrant a response. I'm just speculating here. I don't know. It doesn't seem a very interesting kind of question to me personally, but there it is. Okay, let me scroll down and see if there's any recent questions that have come in. Rope-a-dope says, hi, Capturing Christianity. Do you think the Bible is infallible or inerrant? Do you think this is a defensible position to hold, infallibility or inerrancy? Yeah, so I am on this side. I lean toward inerrancy. I know that Liddy McGrew and there's some other really smart Christians that deny inerrancy in the strict sense, but I lean toward that view. And one of the reasons why I haven't abandoned that is because the arguments against biblical inerrancy strike me as very poor. They strike me as just not good arguments. So that's probably the primary reason why I haven't abandoned that view. Is that the arguments for there's some contradiction in Scripture, those don't really strike me as very powerful. Here's the reason for that. So you're talking about infallibility, you're talking about inerrancy. There's different ways to understand the inspiration of Scripture. How did God do that? There's a bunch of different models. There's even models that incorporate accommodation into the text. So it's even if there's some sort of error in the Bible, that doesn't necessarily count against inspiration, because inspiration lies on the level of divine elocution. I'm getting into some technical terminology here, but there's just so many different ways to understand inspiration and then also inerrancy. It's on the inerrancy side of things, the standard view of what that means is that there's no error in what the Bible affirms or teaches. That's what inerrancy means. And so you could just say that that's not what this passage is trying to teach or affirm here, is this error that you think you found in the Bible. So there's so much, I don't want to say wiggle room, but there is a sort of wiggle room in your different views of inspiration on the one hand, what an inerrancy might look like, what the interpretation of the passage might look like, whether or not it's actually trying to affirm something in the... So this is another reason why I'm not super interested in biblical apologetics, is because it's to me, it's a lot harder. There's there's a lot more to really understand on the one hand, but then it's a lot more difficult to build arguments against the Bible. And so I have a low, my expectation that anyone's going to have some kind of knockdown argument against the inspiration of Scripture based on what I've seen so far and based on what I know of the different views of inspiration that there are, different views of inerrancy and different interpretations of passages. It seems like it's a really tall order, to put it lightly, what someone has to go through in order to really do that. And so it's just something that hasn't really interested me. And maybe one day I'll change my mind on that, but that's sort of where I currently sit. Okay, Visual Dawn, $10 live stream or live chat. Thank you for sending this in, Visual. In one stream, you mentioned a book by John Leslie called Universes, which I looked up afterwards. What other one or two books would you recommend as interesting reads? Can be any topic. Good question. One book that I recommend every single person in the world reads is How Reason Can Lead to God by Josh Rasmussen. That book is super, super cool. It's the best argument for the existence of God that I've seen. It's also presented in a really accessible format, so anybody can go and read that book. It doesn't matter who you are. You can't be 5 or 6 years old, but as long as you've got some teenagers and up, I would say be able to read this book and get something out of it. That's one book that I would highly recommend reading. Let me think about another one. Oh, the Bible. Go read the Bible. And I know that's kind of cheating, so let me give you a different book. You know what's really, apart from the Bible, what would be a really good recommendation is to get a good commentary on the Bible. The one that I've got, I think, is just called New Bible Commentary, and it's got a commentary on each book of the Bible. And so what I do when I do my devotional time is I'll read a chapter in a book, and then I'll follow it up with the corresponding commentary on that chapter. So if it's, say, the book of Matthew, I'll read Matthew chapter 1, and then I'll go in the commentary and read what the commenter has to say about that chapter, and some of the historical background. What is the author of Matthew trying to really get at here? It's really, really, really insightful. If you haven't done that, I would highly recommend, because as I actually did a whole study on Matthew, and there were some parts in Matthew where I was man, this seems I don't know about this. Jesus seemed, I don't know. And then I read the commentary and I was like, okay, that makes a whole lot more sense. And it was just really beneficial personally to my own understanding of Christianity and some of these more problematic passages, which again contributes to my like, it's going to be really difficult for someone to give a really good argument against divine inspiration or inerrancy. It's going to be really difficult. Okay, looks like Rope-A-Dope, they sent in the same question again, or maybe I just missed it or put it up twice. The one that I've already answered on infallibility and inerrancy. There you go. I've answered it. Scrolling back down to the very bottom here to see if there's anything else. There are recent questions that have been sent in. Trevin D'Souza. Hey Cam, how have you been? I've been great. You still collab with Pints with Aquinas? I talked to him yesterday. We're talking about having him bring me over to his studio sometime this spring. Be on the lookout for that. If you don't mind, what's the progress on your investigation into Catholicism? Yeah, good question. So it hasn't progressed a whole lot since the last thing that I did with Stephen Nemesh, but I had a thought the other day that I was like, man, I wish Catholicism was true. And this was because there was a scandal that happened in our church, the church that we currently attend in Houston. There was a scandal that happened, and I was like, it was really upsetting. It was really disheartening. I was like, man, it'd be nice to just like not have to worry about this kind of stuff. But then I was talking to Matt, and he was like, it's good to know that Catholics aren't the only ones that have scandals. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's so many scandals in the Catholic Church. That's like some of my most recent thinking on Catholicism. But I'm still, I will say this, there's been some progress made on divine simplicity. Divine simplicity is something that's holding me back from accepting Catholicism. And that progress was made in my interview with Dr. Sijuwati. I can't remember his first name right now. I don't know how I remember his last name. Josh Sijuwati. He has a view of divine simplicity that seemed actually fairly plausible, or didn't seem as problematic. I'll put it that way. So that's some of the progress that's been made there. Although I haven't done the work myself to look into exactly what his theory looks like and whether or not it fits with, because that's another question I have. Does like, even if this is a plausible account, is that what is meant by the Catholic Church in terms of divine simplicity? Are there any conflicts there? Don't know about that. I have to look into that. Anyways, that's kind of where I'm currently sitting. So thanks for your question, Trevin. All right. Prime time. There are lots of scientists and philosophers that deny causality. What are the best ways to defend it? So I don't know what you mean by causality. I don't know whether or not these scientists and philosophers are denying what you mean by causality. You've got it in caps here, so you mean something specific. But I don't have like the numbers on that in the first place. So this first part of the question is a statement. There are a lot of scientists and philosophers that deny causality, but I would need to see that first and see exactly what they're denying before I could say what's the best way to defend it. The only thing that that kind of comes to mind is that you could defend a principle of sufficient reason, something like that, where contingent things that happen in the world, contingent events, or you could say just contingent things have an explanation for their existence. There's different ways to formulate the principle of sufficient reason, or like a principle of causation. William Lane Craig's principle that he uses in his Kalam-style argument is everything that begins to exist has a cause. So again, I don't really know exactly what you mean by causality. Like, do they deny that causation even happens in the world? I don't think that they'd want to say that. Like, you don't think it's the case that someone caused my iPhone to come into existence? You don't think that there's causation there? You don't think that my parents caused me to exist? That to me would strike me as just like, it doesn't seem like a whole bunch of philosophers and scientists would deny that. So I'd need to know exactly what's meant. All right, let's move on. This is the downtime that I have to like go and read comments. That's not super exciting. So just bear with me. There's a question from Michael X. And a lot of these questions I haven't like read in advance. This is all happening live. So it could be a good question, could be a bad question. I don't know. All right, question from Michael X. What would you say to a Christian who is not interested in comparing accessible and rigorous defenses of non-theism, Leon Lauder, to their own position? I'll read that one more time. What would you say to a Christian who is not interested in comparing accessible and rigorous defenses of non-theism to their own position? Accessible, not interested in comparing accessible and rigorous defenses of non-theism. What would I say to them? I'd say do it. It's part of like, you need to do that kind of study if you're going to, I don't know, hold a rational belief. That's part of your epistemic duties, is maybe one way of putting it. So like, people are oddly, if you want to be justified in your beliefs, a lot of epistemologists think that you've got to do certain things in order to be justified. You've got to try to eliminate your biases as much as possible. You've got to do your due diligence. You've got to go and actually research the subject. And so if you only research one side of things in terms of like whether or not you're epistemically justified, that might count against your being epistemically justified if you're refusing to go and look at what the other side has to say. Nevertheless, like, you can't just read. I don't think it's wise to just read anyone. I think you've got to pick and choose, because you put it here. You're like comparing accessible and rigorous defenses. So I think you're saying like, go and read the good resources. But I just want to make that caveat while I'm giving this answer, is that you don't just want to read anything. Go and read like the best defenses of non-theism that are out there currently. And Louder, Leon's good. Louder, I think, he's definitely not bad. But Graham Opie is like, if you got to interact with his work. Paul Draper is another one, like, interact with his work as well. Paul Draper and Graham Opie are probably the number 1 and 2 guys. And you could interact with some of the older guys that have sort of passed away, like Mackey and stuff. Sobel, I don't know if Sobel is still around, actually. Someone I'm sure is going to answer in the comments and be like, you should know this. And I probably should. We did just get a super chat. Let me go ahead and get to that. Bread of Life. Thanks for your super chat, Bread of Life. Capturing Christianity. What's the best video by apologetics-related? Best video by Maverick Christian. Those are good questions. I don't have answers to them because I haven't watched all of their videos. So it'd have to be a question of like, what's the best video that I've seen from them? I'll say this. Any video that you watch from them is going to be the best video if you have only seen one video from them. But you nevertheless need to go and look and check out their channels. So I'm really I appreciate them actually bringing this up. Apologetics-related, I plan on having him on the channel. He and I have talked, actually met him at CCV1, and I want to have him on the channel. We just haven't worked out exactly what kind of topic. He creates, if you don't know who he is and you haven't checked out his channel yet, he creates these short little like 5 to 10 minute videos where he's making some kind of argument for something. It's very creative. There's not a lot of apologists who are doing the kind of stuff that he's doing, where he's not just summarizing the work of other philosophers, which is what a lot of apologists do. That's what I do. I summarize the work of other people. I have my own kind of stuff, but he's very creative in the sense of like, he develops his own arguments. He's got a lot of his own ideas that he's publishing on his YouTube channel. Super interesting stuff. I highly recommend going out and checking out his channel. Really cool stuff. Maverick Christian, he's got a lot of his own arguments as well. But what he does, he's got these longer form videos where he's tackling some really long subject. I think his most recent video was actually a debate review of the video that I did with Stephen Woodford on the Kalam cosmological argument. I only watched a portion of that. I actually got it in my watch later. I don't have it in my playlist, but I have it in my mind. Like, I need to watch this video later. Can't remember which part of the video that I caught, either the beginning or the end. Anyways, that's probably going to be a really good video, really good review of the debate. Wade, if you've seen any of his stuff, he's very fair-handed. Is that a term? He's very fair in the way that he assesses arguments. He's very charitable as well. So he's very charitable to people that disagree with him. Like, maybe they aren't meaning this, Cameron. He's one of my reviewers of my scripts actually as well. So shout out to Wade again. I'll respond to an atheist in one of my scripts, and I'll be like, look, this is not a good argument for X, Y, and Z reasons. And then Wade will come in and be like, is that the most charitable reading of them? And I'll be like, stop, Wade. And then he'll like convince me that I need to revise some stuff. So he's so fair and so good. Go check out both of their works. All right, I'm just scrolling back down, trying to find some more questions. Let me actually scroll up to the top and see some questions that were sent in earlier. How about that? Change things up a little bit. Oh, this is an interesting one. Jonathan Becker. Which interpretation of probability do you lean toward? Classical, logical, subjective, propensity, etc. What arguments for God do you think depend on your preferred account? Yeah, that's a good question. I wish if I was actually a philosopher, I'd be able to give probably a more authoritative answer to this. But my interpretation, the one that if you want to call it subjective, the Bayesian form, however you want to classify that, I think that's probably the best one. That's the view of probability, the theory that I lean toward. And what arguments for God do you think depend on my preferred account? I don't know which ones necessarily depend on that, because there's ways that you can put these arguments, even a probabilistic argument, you can still put it in deductive form. So I don't know which one would depend on that. But then the question is, like, what about the defenses of the premises? Do you need to incorporate some kind of theory of probability in order to justify the premises of those arguments, those deductive arguments that you've formulated? I think that's an interesting question. So I don't know. I wish I could give a better answer to that. Oh, that's a good question from MOW. What are the best books I can recommend to someone who is new to Christian apologetics? Here's a lesser known book that I think a lot of people should read. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier in the question that was asked about this. The question that I would recommend, it's almost time to end the stream. My brain's starting to shut down. The book that I would recommend is Taking Pascal's Wager by Michael Rhoda. And that one is a really good book because it introduces, first of all, it updates and defends Pascal's wager, which is a really cool argument. It's not an argument for the existence of God, but it's an argument for belief or commitment to God. But what he does in this book is he updates and defends a version of Pascal's wager, his own version. But then in section 2, he gives arguments for the truth of Christianity. So he talks about the argument from contingency. He gives an argument for the resurrection. And then in the third one, he looks at different lives of people. In the third section, he looks at different lives of Christians who have lived the Christian life and basically shows that these are lives worth living. So, and it's all like kind of ties in with his initial Taking Pascal's Wagers, the book is the name of the book. It ties back into his like overall theme, but it's a good introduction to a lot of these different arguments. So I highly recommend that book for new people who are just getting into it. You could also read On Guard by Dr. William Lane Craig. That'd be a good introductory book. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Tactics by Greg Koukl. That's another good book. It's not really necessarily apologetic specific. There are some arguments in there, but it's more about how to talk to people. It's more along the lines of like, what do you do if you're in a situation where you're trying to share the gospel with somebody? What are the kind of things that you could do? Do you ask questions? Do you respond a certain way? For people who have like anxiety about talking to people about their faith, I would highly recommend checking out that book. It's also, in my view, it's required reading if you want to go and engage people who don't believe. Tactics is a great book. And there are some basic apologetics-related type things that get covered there. So Harry Stark has another question, and I think it's just because it's pulled up in the live chat that I'm going to go ahead and answer it here. Harry Stark, can atheists consistently ground objective morality? Why or why not? Man, I had an experience the other day. And so traditionally, I've been kind of skeptical of traditional moral arguments. So the version of the moral argument that Dr. William Lane Craig gives, if God does not exist, then objective morality doesn't exist. Premise 2, objective morality does exist. And then the conclusion follows, God exists. Those style of moral arguments I've been kind of more skeptical about and critical of publicly. But man, I had an experience the other day, and it was just a couple days ago, but I don't remember exactly what happened. But I just remember being like, man, it's just really implausible that there would be such things as moral obligations. Like, that's just really weird. Because what we have physics, we have like chemicals and chemistry, laws of physics, things are moving around. But like, why would there be obligations? That doesn't, on atheism, like that just seems weird. I had that experience the other day, and then I thought, well, how would I actually defend that to somebody? And I was like, I wouldn't be able to, because it was just an experience that I had. It was just really weird. And I think, I mean, that's kind of the defense that you get from William Lane Craig and others on this first premise of the moral argument. It's like, yeah, doesn't that seem weird? And it does. It seems pretty weird. But there are some there are some attempts. I won't just call them some attempts. I'll call them some good attempts. There are some really good attempts at grounding objective morality on atheism. And the principal one that I'm thinking of currently is Eric Wielenberg's version of moral Platonism. And that one is still really weird. That's kind of just true of reality, though. Like if you look at quantum mechanics, and that is still based in physics, completely secular discipline, obviously. That one is just really, it's really weird. Quantum mechanics is super weird if you start to look into that stuff. So it wouldn't be too surprising that we'd find super weird stuff elsewhere. Like maybe find some obligations. It sounds weird saying out loud, actually. Yeah, that's what I got to say about that. I think we got a super chat that was sent in. Let me scroll down here. We did. Rivertown Cards. Thanks for sending in a super chat, Rivertown. Do you still believe in Reformed epistemology? Yes. And I will never give that belief up. If Christian belief is properly basic, then why would we need to pursue non-theistic arguments? If Christian belief is properly basic, then why would we need to pursue non-theistic arguments? So you wouldn't necessarily need to. That's not, I don't think that's necessarily what needs to happen, but it's nevertheless not a bad thing to do it. That's probably the only answer that I would give. It's like there's a lot of things you don't necessarily need to do, but it's nevertheless a good thing to do it. You don't have to become a doctor, but it'd be a good thing to become a doctor. Be a good thing to do that if that's like what you're drawn to. It's a good thing to investigate the arguments for and against the existence of God. I think that's good. Yeah. Okay, let's get to some more questions. Adam Ehab. Who are the best authors of apologetics books? Best authors. Josh Rasmussen. Greg Koukl with Tactics. William Lane Craig. Richard Swinburne. And a whole bunch of others that I can't think up off the top of my head. I'd have to go look at my bookshelf behind me to get some more names. But that should get you going. All right, let me find some more questions here. Oh, Dalton Johnson, when I was talking about the moral argument. Is it really weird, Cameron? Is it really weird? Really weird? It's very weird. It's very strange, Dalton. Objective morality. Yeah. The more I think about it, it's like, man, that is just really weird. Like you've got these like, so you've got these animals, they have blood, they can die, they can live, they can die, but like it's still just like matter and stuff moving around, shifting positions, taking on different geometrical shapes, different spatial temporal locations. It's like that's what you have. But then why think that there would on top of that be these moral obligations that sort of supervene on these physical situations? It just seems really weird. I mean, it'd be good. It's it's sort of a happy coincidence, maybe, that that's all the case. And even then, it would still be really weird. But it's really weird. Okay, let's get to some more questions. Joseph Aggs. Have you seen the Jewish Catholic channel? No. He argues for Catholic faith based on Talmudic Judaism. I have not. But it sounds interesting. Trevin D'Souza, small follow-up from his previous super chat that he sent in. Thanks again for sending that, Trevin. Hey Cam, small follow-up. The Classical Theism podcast by John DeRosa is thick on the philosophical side of Catholicism. You'd love it, and maybe you can collab too. Also, love from Mumbai. That's awesome. You're from Mumbai. That's cool. Yeah, so Classical Theism podcast. I'm very familiar with him. He's also a supporter of Capturing Christianity, John DeRosa. So stuff that he does on his podcast, really, really good stuff. Really good. I've listened to it on several occasions. Really good listening material. He's also really good at breaking these difficult concepts down. The way that he plans out and maps out his shows I think is really good, really organized, really structured well. And yeah, it's good. So I highly recommend checking it out too if you've never heard of it. The Classical Theism podcast. Really good. Scott Milligan says he sent in a super chat. Let me scroll up and see if I can find it. There it is. I missed it. Sorry about that, Scott. Here we go. Hi, Cameron. Hey, Scott. Have you looked up any cases of miracles included in the case for the canonization of saints, i.e. miraculous healings occurring after asking a saint to pray for someone? I looked those up. I have not, Scott. So put like what's your number one? You can either leave it in the live chat or you can put it in the comments in the video below after this video is done. And I will go check it out because that sounds really cool. I know that those exist, but I'd be interested to look into the one that you have in mind specifically, if you do have one. And thanks for sending in your super chat. That's awesome, Scott. Okay, scrolling back down, I think we had another super chat that came in. Yep, we did, from Bread of Life. How are plans coming along for CCV2? They're coming along very well, very well. So we've got the entire lineup is already set. We've got some really big names coming and going to be speaking. We're not giving away any details yet. We're going to do a whole announcement on who it is that's going to be speaking at the event, the kind of events that we're hosting. So one debate, one dialogue. So instead of just one debate this year, we're doing kind of two. Second one is not going to be a debate. It's going to be more of a dialogue, like I mentioned, but it's going to be super exciting. And we're going to have a lot of cool stuff this time that we didn't have last time. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be awesome. They're coming along great, to put it shortly. And we have another event that we're currently planning right now that we're going to announce very soon, like this week or next week, very, very soon. So be on the lookout for that. All right, I think that's pretty much going to do it for today. Or maybe I'll just answer some more questions for like another 3 hours. All right, Gustav Fredrickson. Given that Christianity is true, how does a person find his way to Christianity? Every worldview has smart people defending it. Can an average person figure out the truth? That's a really good question. How does a person find his way to Christianity? I think that's going to be a case-by-case kind of thing. Every worldview has smart people defending it. True. Can an average person figure out the truth? Yeah, I think they can. But it's a sort of case-by-case basis. So and the reason why I'm saying that is because like I could give a sort of blanket statement about like how people could come to Christian faith, but there's different ways of doing it. Some people come to the Christian faith by just listening to a message from someone presenting the gospel, like on a street corner. You know, that could be a way that someone comes to faith in Christ. Another way is through dreams. Another way is through apologetics, through philosophy. Another way is by coming across something that conflicts with their current worldview, and then that's the sort of starting point that takes them down the path toward looking at arguments for theism and then becoming a theist and then eventually a Christian. There's stories like that all over the place, but it's different for everyone. So that's why I wouldn't want to give like one generic answer to that. Elephant Watchtower says, thoughts on Randall Rouser's criticisms of William Lane Craig Copan's work on the slaughtering of the Canaanites. I haven't read his book, but I have a really high regard for Randall Rouser. So I can only assume that it's a really good critique and that it's worth responding to. I had plans to bring Randall on with Matt Flanagan, but that kind of fizzled out, and I haven't put Randall with anyone else yet. That's a good reminder. I need to follow up on that and have someone talk with Randall. I'm going to write this down. Randall Rouser verse awesome someone. Nice. Okay. I'll leave that out in case I just get some more excellent ideas. Oh, this was a super chat. 400 something. I don't know what that is. That symbol is okay. Hi Cam, nice hair. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for your work from Chennai, India. Chennai? India, that is amazing. Kindly say Vanakkam. Hello in Tamil. Vanakkam. Vanakkam. I don't know if I'm saying it right. For your Tamil fans here, if you can, please. Vanakkam. I don't know if that's right at all. Vanakkam. Vanakkam. I don't know. All right, Matt. If Christianity isn't true, would you want to know? Yep. Yep. Thanks for your super chat, Matt. I would definitely want to know that. Definitely want to know that. All right, Dr. Dre. Some more super chats. Thank you guys for sending all these in. Do you know any early Christians that believe that society and government make men evil? Since I watched a video claiming Augustine challenged that. I don't. I don't know of any early Christians that believe that. Partly because I'm not super familiar with the early Christians. A lot of people criticize me for not being aware of that. But that's another one of these areas where I'm like, the stuff that I read and I'm interested in is on the philosophy side of things. So like the early Christian thinkers, I haven't put as much work into them. Yeah, so I'm not. Unfortunately, that's going to be the answer. Slam RN, she's our moderator, one of our mods. Do you have a position of the final disposition of unbelievers after death? Eternal conscious torment, conditional immortality, or other? So I definitely lean toward annihilationism or conditional immortality. That's the view that I lean toward. What's interesting about that, the reason why I hold that view, I was defending, I think it was on YouTube years ago, I was defending annihilationism against an atheist because they presented an argument against Christianity that assumed the traditional view of hell. And so I was like, well, look, you haven't defeated Christianity because there's all of these different views that you could take on eschatology. You could take the conditional immortality route, you could take the universalism route, and I was like, well, let's just pick one. Let's just take annihilationism and see if that can be defended. And so during the course of arguing with this atheist, I'm assuming that he was an atheist, I became convinced of annihilationism myself. And initially, I had been convinced that annihilationism was just based on emotion. I was like, these people just don't want to accept annihilationism, or they don't want to accept the traditional view because they're just like, they find something morally objectionable to it. It's a sort of emotion-based response that they've got to it. They just don't want to believe that there's some psychological, that's was what I believed about annihilationism until I had to defend it in the context of an argument that I was having with an atheist. And as a result of that little back and forth, I became convinced that the case for annihilationism is surprisingly strong. And so that's what kind of opened me up to it. Thanks for sending in your super chat, Slam. That's awesome. Whoa. Haley Luya. What's up, Haley? She says, have you looked into the SCOTUS position on the existence of God? Nope. Question from Adam Ehab. What do you think is the truth and why? Orthodox versus Catholic versus Protestant. Well, I am Protestant. And part of that is one of the things that I just mentioned just now, answered, is annihilationism. I don't think that you can be... Now, maybe within Orthodoxy, you can accept that. You can accept annihilationism. I'm not exactly sure. I know that David Bentley Hart is Orthodox and he accepts universalism. So I would suspect that within Orthodoxy you could adopt annihilationism. Might be wrong about that. But I have other issues like the Eucharist, the real presence to you. I think that if you deny real presence, you're going to have to be in some kind of Protestant camp. I think that's what's going to be the result of that. And so as a result of the study that I did on the Eucharist, that's where I currently sit. When I went into my study on the Eucharist, I was very open to being convinced either way of what John 6 has to say, what the Bible has to say more generally about the Eucharist. I was like, I could go any position. If I became convinced of the real presence, then accepting real presence doesn't mean that you've got to reject Protestantism, right? You could just become Anglican. There's a whole lot of Protestant traditions that accept real presence. So I was very open to it. But since now that I came down on the side of denying real presence, that's kind of the issue. So Adam Ehab, that's one of the things that's holding me back. Okay, I said that we were coming close to the end of the stream, and I think that we should go ahead and do that. I have some more exciting things planned for this week as well, so I don't have those up on the live stream yet, but they will be. So thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. These Q&As you never know what you're going to get, and it was really cool today, though. I really enjoyed it. And let me know in the comments if you'd like to do more of these, if you'd like to do more Q&As, if you've enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed hanging out live. If you don't enjoy it, if you're like, I could just completely go without these, also let me know, because I enjoy them, but I also don't want to just be creating content that no one cares about. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next Capturing Christianity video. Peace. Hey, it's me again. Actually, don't leave yet. I've got something super, super important to tell you. So first of all, you're awesome. Like you just watched a really, really long video just now, and you're still watching it. That is actually pretty amazing. Secondly, we have hundreds, literally hundreds of other apologetics-related videos for you to watch on our channel. Go check them out. I've interviewed exorcists, hosted debates between Christians and atheists. I've even made response videos to atheists. All of that is available on our channel. Go check it out. Third, I rely on people that see value in my work, people like you that watch videos to the very end, to keep the lights on around here. Literally, this is how I feed my family. So if you see value